Hello and welcome to CATSweek. I'm Annalise Poorman. At the Election Board meeting on September 5th, County Clerk Nicole Brown gave an update on the 2025 budget she will be bringing to the Monroe County Council. Brown explained the difference in the budget for 2025, saying that although it is not an election year, there is still work to be done.
The budget hearings are this evening for the clerk's office. I'm sure the public is aware that the county council is meeting several evenings a week regarding budget requests from different departments. And so I will be going, as I understand it. My counterparts will not be able to attend. I will be attending this evening. And so I wanted to give you a summary of the election budget. You may or may not realize that the election budget is one where we try to keep the cost fairly even, because otherwise the presidential would be this huge ask and the municipal would be this very small ask. And so it's hard for the council to know, why are you asking for so much money this year as opposed to last year or something like that. So my predecessor worked with the council to create a fund that they put money into every year. We may or may not request the amount of money that's in there. The good news is that any money that is not expended rolls over to the next year. So you have been provided with a copy of the budget. You'll note that the presidential year that we're in, I would have asked for significantly more money than I am this year. I'm requesting less for 2025, but I want to be clear. That does not mean that election things do not go on in the off year. As you might imagine, with an election nationwide, particularly the possibly historical one we could have this year, everybody's ordering supplies, everybody needs things. And so our vendors get depleted with what they have available to people who oversee elections. So we spend that year replenishing all of our supplies, replacing equipment that is not in working order or has broken down. We do our voter list maintenance and make sure that everybody is registered to vote who's supposed to be here, pull out the ones that can be canceled, things like that.
Election Supervisor Kylie Moreland said that although there are not currently any elections planned for the year 2025, the Richland Bean Blossom School Board is considering holding a vote on a referendum.
One thing that I would add is that with it being a non-election year, we could very well have the possibility of a special election from a school board, which right now we have received letters from RBB about them talking about a referendum. If they were to decide that they wanted to do it next year, they very well could. They would be paying for everything in return. But we do have to think about the possibility of that or them holding off until 26.
Brown responded and further explained that if the RBB School Board does hold an election, they will be responsible for paying for it.
Ms. Kylie is right and correct in that I have not asked for appropriations. You'll see where we would normally have salaries for judges and clerks and sheriffs and things like that. You'll see that those lines are at zero. If we should be compelled to have a special election, I will have to go to the council and ask for appropriations. We can be reimbursed for most of it. They will have to pay, but I would have to ask. And so thank you again for reminding me of that.
Board member John Fernandez asked if they were able to budget for the Future Vote Center. Brown responded,
maybe it's premature to even bring this up, but my assumption is that at the completion of the Vote Center Study Committee's work, there'll probably be a recommendation regarding vote centers. I assume there's going to be some startup costs related to implementation, assuming we did it. So I know that you can't really budget for something that hasn't been fully developed, but
correct. And you would be right in your presumption. There would be some startup costs. My hope in working with our vendor is that they would be minimal, in that we already have equipment and we try to ask for what we asked for when we got the initial election equipment, with the hope that we would go to vote centers. So it should be an easy transition. That doesn't necessarily mean an inexpensive transition, and I wouldn't know until or unless we had to reach out to the vendor to get those costs and quotes.
Fernandez said he was concerned that the budget did not have anything set aside for vote center startup costs. Brown said that they can't do anything until the Vote Center Study Committee finalizes their recommendations.
I think they look very reasonable. I mean, my biggest fear, Nicole, is that it's not robust enough to be able to get a jump start on what's next, but we can't really do that now until we really have a recommendation.
Until we have a recommendation.
Has to approve it.
And the truth of the matter is that they have to, I mean, they can't not give us the money, and I believe that both the council and the commissioners are supportive of going to vote centers. I've not heard opposition. We can't do anything until we get the recommendation. So, I mean, the fairest thing to say is we will get the money, but I wouldn't even know what to do now because I don't have a recommendation, a quote, or anything. And until we get that, the money will be there. That's all I can say.
Board members Judith Bankart and Fernandez said that they were in support of Clerk Brown bringing the budget to the County Council. At their September 4th meeting, the Bloomington City Council discussed the Convention Center project. A representative from the Capital Improvement Board for the Convention Center project, Doug Bruce, showed the council the project goals. Council member Matt Flaherty noted that the council had previously provided feedback that they were not in support of a skywalk placed above the street connecting the old and new convention center. Bruce responded, explaining why they are still considering the skywalk after receiving the council's input.
So one of the things that we agreed on was that in prioritizing the pedestrian realm and high-quality compact urban form in our downtown, that we did not want to see skywalk connections, specifically noting that those undermine human interaction with and the quality of public space. Again, we've heard repeatedly that this is about downtown business vitality and bringing people into the outdoor realm of our downtown. Am I understanding correctly that the feeling of the CIB now is to ignore that guidance and go with the skywalk over College Avenue? Is that right?
Well, I wouldn't exactly say it's ignoring the guidance. We've taken it under advisement. I mean, again, this design is not completed. Every hotelier, convention center, consultant that we've worked with said that, again, I agree that a pedestrian scale and wanting and having people interact with our downtown is important, and because of where we've located this, we'll have access points all the way around the building, but having a convention center and an existing convention center and not being able to go back and forth in January or moving items back and forth from the loading docks to one building and having to go outside to do it is just not, I'll say, not real feasible. So it's something that again, it hasn't been set in stone, and I wouldn't say that we've ignored it. We've taken it under consideration. It's just not something yet that, it looks like we're leaning towards having to have some sort of connector.
Council member Kate Rosenbarger added to Flaherty's opinion, stating that if the reason for a skywalk is because crossing the street is unsafe, then they need to consider changing the structure of the street.
I don't think there's anything out there that backs up that pedestrians should be put in tubes to make them safer. Streets are dangerous by design, and if you think that the crossing of College at 3rd is going to create more pedestrian deaths, then what we need to do is change the street so it's not dangerous by design. Also, if you think we should be putting gerbil tubes for our pedestrians, then we have a lot more intersections than just 3rd and College. We have all our city intersections. Like, that's not okay. I mean, I don't support a lot of this anyway. Like I just heard the other day, 14% of a dollar that goes for a convention center visitor goes back into the local economy. But I just want to say, like, none of that was backed up with facts. And, like, what is backed up is that we need to make our streets safer for the people using them at street level. Nothing is saying we need to put people above the street so, like, cars have better access.
Next, Council President Isabel Piedmont Smith highlighted a grant from the Lilly Foundation that has been applied for by the Community Foundation of Bloomington and Monroe County. The grant is meant to help fight homelessness locally. A letter of support was read aloud and was approved by the council. During the public comment period, a camp leader for the homeless community, James Bernard, said homeless and nomadic people in Bloomington have been forced to move from one location to another 3 times this past month. Bernard said that it has negatively impacted his family.
The thing is not all of us in the homeless community, or I don't even want to use the word homeless, let me rephrase that, not all of us in our nomadic way of life that you see out there are bad people. Some of us are, some of us are not, but we all know, can we not agree, that it only takes a few bad apples to ruin a whole tree. So therefore, we do have a few bad apples in our society. We will agree upon that. Now, what we would like society to understand from our point of view is that, say for heating instances in the winter, blankets do get wet in tents, and they are hard to dry. Yes, I understand the open fire and less cooking policy that me and the mayor had spoke about, and Madam Mayor, we'll talk more about that as well. But what I would like to say is there are supposed to be resources and places out there that are community support for the nomadic society in which we reside. And we are still part of the community, for in the word neighbor, legal and Webster's dictionary terminology, it does not say that a neighbor needs to live in a house to be a neighbor. It says one has to respect the community and be respectful of those in its community and help keep that community upheld and respectful of deeds and looking. And which some of us are trying to do, but we cannot do so if we keep getting run from campsite to campsite to campsite every week because of whatever reason, okay? My wife has stage 4 prostate cancer. In the last month, I've had to move 3 times my camp with my whole family. My nephew, me, his wife, my dog, his dogs, my brother, his wife, his dogs, to another spot 3 times in the last month. Council, we would like you to know that we are more than willing to be a part of the success of our community as compared to being a disgrace and disruptful part of that.
Later in the meeting, the mayor's 2025 budget proposal was considered. Some council members expressed dissatisfaction with the current plan. They were most concerned about budgets being cut for projects such as public safety, transportation, and infrastructure initiatives. Council President Isabel Piedmont Smith said that she thinks the budget is in dire need of additions for these initiatives in order to win her vote.
If that's not spelled out as going into GO bond proposals, then I would have a hard time voting for this budget.
Mayor Carrie Thompson responded that all of the council's initiatives are important, but she said that the budget is finite and the proposed plan already has the city operating at a deficit. She emphasized the importance of looking into a variety of funding methods for the council's priorities.
We are doing our best to put together a budget that meets top city needs, looks at other funding streams to potentially fund capital projects, which they can do pretty well, and attempt to not increase taxes.
Thompson explained that the proposed plan, as is, would not affect the tax rates of Bloomington residents. Instead, the plan would rely on Bloomington's debt capacity by using bonds. She said that the safety and infrastructure initiatives can all be covered with these bonds and grants. Government salaries have to be covered through the operating budget, so the proposal allocates more to personnel than to the council's initiatives. She also said that the budget cannot fully pay for everything that the council is proposing without raising taxes.
We're here to talk to you so that we can make changes. So we're trying to get enough input so that we can weigh options and move items around to the best of our ability, and try to meet as many needs as we can, and also to hopefully help people understand that there are other funds available that are really practical for many of these things. So I understand this is a trust exercise.
The council and the mayor agreed to schedule a meeting to further discuss the budget plan at a later date. The Monroe County Board of Commissioners met for their regular session on September 4th. The commissioners heard a presentation from the consulting firm DLZ regarding a site analysis for a potential location for the new jail. DLZ project manager Scott Carnegie gave the presentation on the North Park property.
In particular, DLZ was requested to do a site assessment analysis on 3 different parcels as it relates to the possible site for a new sheriff's office and jail/justice center. Those 3 sites, as you can see there, they're off of Vernal Pike, just east of the intersection of Curry Pike and Vernal Pike there. The 3 sites, starting with the site furthest to the west or to the left, that is a 14-acre site that's currently zoned PUD. The center site is a total of 46 acres. It also is zoned PUD. And then the site furthest to the east or the right, there's 2 different zoning designations for that parcel. The northern parcel is zoned Estate Residential 1, and the southern half is zoned Light Industrial, and it's a total of 53 acres. Sticking with the zoning, if you look at the site, the sites that surround these 3 sites, you can see over off of Curry Pike, there are some kind of factory warehouses there. I think we're all probably familiar with this location that's zoned PUD. Continuing in the clockwise direction up around Stouts Creek, you see Estate Residential 1, lots that back up to the northern property line of the contemplated sites. Continuing on around clockwise off of Woodyard, you also see Estate Residential 1 zoning. And continuing then on around to the south, there's also single dwelling residential of 3.5 and then multi-dwelling unit residential. So there's that mobile home park over to the kind of the southwest corner.
President and CEO of VET Environmental Engineering, Sarah Hamidovich, provided a rundown on the Phase 2 environmental study at the North Park property.
Stout Creek runs through the site, and that is a historic known location of low-level PCB contamination coming out of the Bennett's dump site. And so when we did the Phase 1, our only recognized environmental condition was to evaluate the floodplain that extends very near the North Park boundary. That would be the south North Park boundary, to determine whether floodwaters that proceed onto the site may have caused low-level PCB contamination historically or ongoing. So that prompted the Phase 2 investigation. We did soil sampling to that effect. We advanced 6 soil borings right along the kind of the floodplain and property boundary line, which is just to the south, kind of on and south of that property boundary for North Park. There were 2 locations with very low-level PCB contamination. There was 1 location that had some arsenic contamination, but that's just Monroe County. So from a environmental contamination standpoint, we don't see any that is of import or anything that you would have to remediate for or anything like that.
Hamidovich walked through the environmental consultant's wetland assessment for the property on West Hunter Valley Road.
In addition to the Phase 1, Phase 2, we did a wetland and jurisdictional waters delineation. We did not identify any wetlands. We think that there are a fair number of wetlands just south of the property, but not on the property. We did find 2 jurisdictional streams on the upper portion of North Park, and they're pretty clear ditches that are there for conveyance of stormwater. Those 2 streams make a confluence, run downhill into the retention pond, and then proceed off-site to Stout Creek.
Next, the Commissioners heard a service agreement with TK Elevator Corporation for elevator door maintenance and repairs at the current county jail. County Fleet and Building Manager Richard Kreider presented the agreement.
This request is to accept the proposal submitted by TK Elevator Corporation in the amount of $10,496.98 to repair the elevator clutch and to furnish and install car door rollers and relating sheaves on elevator doors to prevent future breakdowns related to the opening and closing mechanisms.
Commissioners Penny Giffens and Julie Thomas emphasized that this agenda item means more costs for upkeep at the current jail.
This is just more of the upkeep that we're having to pay on this facility.
Yep.
And it just keeps happening.
Yeah.
Every month.
I'm just grateful it's only $10,500. That's all I can say. So thank you for your attention to this.
The Commissioners approved the agreement with a 2-0 vote. The Commissioners then heard a change order for Phase 2 of an environmental study for the potential jail site. The total amount of the agreement would cost $7,753.50. The Commissioners approved the change order unanimously. And that is all for CATSweek. Thank you for joining us. For CATS and WFHB, I'm Annalise Poorman.